The literal opening seconds of S. Craig Zeller's 2015 horror western Bone Tomahawk establishes everything you need to know about this brutal, unforgiving tale of savagery. We hear the soft ambience of a quiet desert setting, followed by the intruding buzzing of flies to signify the corpses we've yet to see, as gritty, determined footsteps approach a sleeping man. His throat is cut by an unsharpened knife, his perpetrator desperately sawing at the neck, as the grungy sound of flesh and bone and the gargling of blood penetrates the senses. After it's said and done, the two robbers show nothing but disregard for their murders, as though it's just another day in the wilderness. The killer named Purvis is lucky to be alive when his partner Buddy finishes the job before Purvis is shot, but the sound forces them deeper into the valley to evade incoming attention. However, their savagery is only met with further savagery when they begin hearing strange and ominous animal howls in the surrounding hills before they encounter what appears to be an ancient burial ground. There's an irony in Buddy's response that echoes the themes for the rest of the film. While Purvis is perturbed and begs to go elsewhere, Buddy believes there's less to fear in godless savages than the civilized man hunting them down, only for him to get his comeuppance when being suddenly disemboweled by a mysterious cave dweller while Purvis flees for his life. Now, if these first 5 minutes don't grab your attention, the journey over the next 2 hours is definitely not for you. But I can confidently say Bone Tomahawk is up there with Clint Eastwood, John Wayne, and Coen brother westerns. It is a well-shot, uniquely paced, and beautifully scripted film. It's shocking, eccentric, witty, intelligent, and its characters are full of flavour.
Well, you're the most intelligent man here, is that a fact?
It is. Sheriff Hunt has a wife. So does Mr. O'Dwyer. And you're a widower.
What has that got to do with anything?
Smart men don't get married.
It's worth keeping in mind that Bone Tomahawk is unapologetically blunt and likes to take its time and soak in its world building, so I recommend going in with the understanding it is a western first and horror flick very far second. In fact, for context, while it has a reputation for being a nasty and disturbing watch, which it very much is, it accounts for so little of what happens during its 2-hour runtime, which mostly consists of 4 men traveling through the wilderness, but it speaks remarkable volumes for just how potent and impactful those short and sudden bursts of violence and horror actually are. So, a number of videos back, I talked about initially wanting to cover Bone Tomahawk as a sort of the most disturbing horror western you've never seen, even though I know many people have seen it. I mean, if you can't tell by now, I get requests to cover these films, and if you've ever played the algorithm game as long as I have, you'll know it's purely engagement bait. But nonetheless, at the time I thought I would do something stranger, which ended up being Deadbirds, and I knew full rightly I would end up circling back to Bone Tomahawk, because ever since I saw it upon its initial release, 9 years ago, I think, it ended up being one of the most disarming and surprising horror gems I had seen in quite some time. So if you haven't seen it, you're in for a pretty haunting treat. Now, with all that in mind, let's take a brief respite to thank our wonderful sponsor who made this video possible, Odoo. Odoo is an all-in-one management software designed for business owners of all shapes and sizes to simplify and optimize the administrative burdens of running a business. Whether it be invoicing, accounting, project management, tracking inventory, or my personal biggest challenge at the minute, website creation, Odoo offers 45 easy-to-use applications, with your first application being completely free for life, with any and all additional apps falling under a very affordable subscription. I highly recommend their website creation app because not only does Odoo offer unlimited hosting and support and a free personalized domain name for 1 year, it is disgustingly easy to use and produces slick and professional results. In fact, let me show you using 4 easy steps. Once you select the website app along with e-commerce, e-learning, or live chat, you firstly define your goals, then select a color palette or insert your own logo, choose what pages and features you require, pick a theme that speaks to you, and that's practically it. From there, you have complete and utter autonomy in how you customize your website to make it special and unique to you, from inserting videos and animated graphics, to using generative AI to spark ideas, to basically fine-tuning each and every nugget of detail using a simple drag-and-drop process and accessible interface. Simply follow my link in the description to start your own free website with unlimited support today, and check out everything Odoo has to offer, because speaking for myself, it has taken the stress and tedium out of business management. Our story begins 11 days later, where we're introduced to our 4 protagonists living in the small but ironically titled town of Bright Hope. We have the bitter and stubborn Arthur O'Dwyer, played by Patrick Wilson, who spends his days feeling sorry for himself after injuring his leg falling off his roof during a storm, the arrogant but elegantly spoken gunslinger John Bruder, played by Matthew Fox, who undeniably steals the show, the timid deputy Chicory, played by Richard Jenkins, who's grieving the loss of his wife, and finally there's the firm and astute Sheriff Franklin Hunt, played by our Lord and Saviour Kurt Russell. These 4 men are simply outstanding and elevate an already brilliant script to sustain your attention, as what ensues is an urgent manhunt to track down several townsfolk who are abducted by the feral cave dwellers we witnessed in the beginning. Fox in particular is what some critics might call a revelation. I only know him from Lost, but he is so electrifying in this. While I wouldn't call his performance scene-chewing, he absolutely devours his dialogue with such charisma and authenticity that honestly, I still to this day want a prequel just about this guy.
And I've killed more Indians than everyone here put together.
Well, it's an ugly boast.
It isn't a boast, but a fact.
In any other film, he would be framed as that shallow, problematic douchebag you can't wait to see get his comeuppance, and while, yeah, he is still a problematic douchebag, as we'll see later on, he's just so super enigmatic and nuanced, and clearly has a lot of history to him. However, before the quest commences, tensions first arise when Chicory anxiously informs Hunt of the mysterious Purvis hiding out in town, whereupon questioning Purvis at the local tavern, Hunt abruptly incapacitates him when he attempts to flee. It's at this point we should probably address the style of S. Craig Zeller's use of violence, which as you can see here is cold, blunt, and fiercely unpredictable, but also notably very jarring. Zeller has made 3 films in his career thus far, all of which I think are great and worth your time if you can invest in their surprisingly lengthy runtimes. The other 2 are Dragged Across Concrete and Brawl in Cell Block 99, the latter of which I reviewed many years ago, and they're basically these 70s-esque pulp grindhouse B-movies where it calls attention to the gritty, gruesome practical effects as a sort of homage to the films that inspired it. Zeller very much comes from the same mold as Quentin Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez. There is no half measure in his commitment to his style. In fact, he names his films very explicitly for what they are, so when he chooses violence, fuck me does it catch you off guard and not hold back, nor does it take any prisoners without likely doing something horrible to them. I guess one way to summarize his style is that it's realistically mean-spirited but not overly gratuitous. Anyway, Hunt eventually leaves Purvis in the hands of Arthur's wife Samantha, who is a nurse summoned to extract the bullet from Purvis's wound under the watch of Deputy Nick, the 3 of whom are then abducted by the cave dwellers off-screen, who presumably raided the town to hunt down Purvis for desecrating their burial ground several days prior. It's initially and ignorantly suspected the perpetrators are American Indians, but a local expert explains it's far more complicated than that, and what they're dealing with are what he calls troglodytes, a tribe of inbred feral cannibals who live in seclusion in caves in the distant mountains known as the Valley of the Starving Men. From here, the 4 men volunteer to track down the abducted townsfolk, with Arthur being warned about the effects his leg injury may have on progress, and what ensues for the next hour is a conflict of 4 massive egos and their unfiltered demeanors. When you break it down into its simplest form, you have 4 attitudes I think we're all afraid to admit we've all been at some point. You have the one who's plain and direct, one who's depressive, one who's stubborn, and one who's so far up his own ass, smelling his own hubris, that he practically becomes a cave dweller in his own right.
You hear it jingle. Point your gun and shoot. I'll probably beat you to the draw, but don't count on me to save you.
Now, I understand I fixated a lot on Bruder in particular, but it's not simply because he's the most entertaining character, but more so I think his polarizing personality brings the most out of the other men to tell us a lot about how the posse's bond grows over the course of their journey. For all the tensions between them, the film doesn't need to directly tell us they don't like each other or create petty conflicts to make things more apparent. What's so distinct about the writing is that it's filled with empathy and compassion. For a story about bleak, godless savagery, savagery, as Buddy puts it, the journey we take with these men subtly unearths a tremendous amount of humanity. While Bruder constantly runs his jaw to remind everyone that he's better than them, he's still extremely protective of the group and warns of the dangers of traveling through the Wild West, especially at night. Hell, he's arguably the reason they end up surviving one particular encounter when he abruptly kills 2 men he believes are scouting their camp, much to Chicory's dismay for thinking they were innocent simply because one of them had a cross. While the film doesn't dig directly into faith, it definitely presents it as a loose, superstitious undertone about men of faith supposedly being the good guys, but Bruder dismisses it as naive and a product of moral fear. When Bruder's suspicions are soon confirmed when bandits do attack them later that same evening, Bruder ends up suffering the most with a stab wound and then having to euthanize his horse after it's injured in the raid. Yet what struck me about this scene was how Hunt and Chicory console him, and just the subtle way Matthew Fox delivers a simple thank you conveys a great deal of respect and appreciation. It's a very realistic depiction of masculine bravado. For all the stone-cold exteriors we try to uphold, you can really sense when their emotional side is trying to break through. It's one of those sentiments of you don't have to say anything. Sometimes a simple nod or a thank you expresses everything that needs to be shared. There's no big dramatic teary-eye breakdown. It would be unrealistic for the type of men that they are. They're conditioned to have these stoic demeanors in a world unforgiving of weakness and cowardice, but they're still human at the end of the day. I'll keep saying it, but it is a brilliantly simplistic film. While on the surface it's a straightforward manhunt, thematically throughout the entire film there's this triangular effect of man versus wild versus man, in that we have characters constantly talking about the extremity between the civilized man and the savage man, with the random wilderness bridging the gap between them. Arrogance is a pretty dominant part of it. In fact, you could say it's the reason for many characters' downfalls. The self-proclaimed civilized man acts like it's of superior intelligence, but when we extract moral and social constructs, on a pure primal level, man ultimately behaves like any other animal, where survival is the top priority. They ignorantly perceive the troglodytes as barbaric monsters with no intelligence or rationale, unlike them. Hell, the movie even frames them as borderline supernatural from their perspective, but when we soon get to it, the troglodytes just have a different way of life that prioritizes survival, and they're by no means less intelligent than we are for pretty distinct reasons. Does that mean the movie eventually humanizes the troglodytes? Absolutely fuck no! You're still seeing this world entirely through the eyes of these 4 egos, but you will happily see those mountains get nuked to all hell after the horrors you're about to witness. So yeah, brace yourself. Eventually, Arthur's leg grows too infected to continue, forcing the posse to effectively abandon him to venture into the mountains alone. Bruder reveals his motive to help comes from a personal vendetta against American Indians after they killed his family, but just as he begins to open up, acknowledge the talents of his fellow posse, and his meticulous plan begins, this happens. Yeah, all of this happens in literally 10 seconds. Hunt is pierced by an arrow, Chicory is smacked by a rock, a troglodyte is shot, and Bruder loses his fucking hand, and in the shock of it all, chooses to make his last stand rather than live with his impairment.
I'm far too vain to ever live as a cripple.
After all his facts about his impressive kill count, his boasting and confidence to kill as many as he can, his death being both abrupt and unceremonious makes it even more tragic. And how many does he actually kill? Just 1. Almost immediately after, Hunt and Chicory are beaten and captured, with it being discovered that the troglodytes have some sort of bone augment in their throats that allows them to make those strange, terrifying howls. This, of course, means all their hope rests in the badly injured Arthur to save the day, which would have Bruder rolling in his grave when, despite his own impairment, Arthur manages to kill fucking 3 of them with the skin of his teeth. I'm not kidding when I say he genuinely survives thanks to pure luck. He's literally sleeping when 2 scouters find him and just so happen to miss their shot, causing him to panic shoot all around him like he's awakened by a Monday morning alarm clock. However, this is where the film earned its infamous reputation. Inside the cave, we learn Purvis has long been killed and eaten, and Samantha and Deputy Nick are being held in a cage separate from Hunt and Chicory. But as we could tell by now, Nick hasn't exactly been much of a character. Instead, instead serving as a showcase for the troglodytes' brutal methods as they strip him, scalp him, violently gag him with said scalp, and proceed to butcher him alive upside down, starting with his bollocks. It is a relentlessly grisly scene as they tear him in half as he screams in agony, with Hunt, Samantha, and Chicory getting a bit of payback later on after tricking the troglodytes into drinking from a poison flask, which kills one of them, causing the others to react with understandable retribution. They cut Hunt's stomach open and force the scalding flask from the fire into his wound before the troglodyte leader shoots him in the arm, but thankfully isn't able to shoot him in the dick because it doesn't know how to cock the rifle, until it does and shoots Hunt fatally in the stomach. Arthur then arrives and distracts the leader, allowing Hunt to use the "oh my god" bone tomahawk to decapitate the leader, and then chooses to stay behind to finish off the other troglodytes as Arthur, Chicory, and Samantha escape. Now, you could argue it is a little anticlimactic, but on a $1.5 million budget and given its scrappy, realistic style, it is fitting for it to end with a bit of a whimper rather than a triumphant bang. On the way out of the cave, we're left with one final savage detail in the form of two pregnant troglodytes whose eyes are pierced with wood and their limbs severed, implying their sole purpose was to breed. However, there is potentially one hopeful detail found when Samantha notes that there are 7 troglodytes left after one dies from poisoning, so when we account for the further 3 Arthur kills plus Hunt's kill, that leaves 3, and as the survivors exit the valley, we hear 3 distant gunshots that make Chicory smile, implying confidence that Hunt was truly a man of his word and finished the job he and his posse set out to do. Yeah, so I hope you enjoyed that one, folks. Thank you so much for watching. As always, please leave your requests in the comments below, and until next time, stay safe, stay away from desecrating ancient burial grounds, and I'll see you all very soon. Bye.